What is going on, guys? It's the MMA Mustache here, and we are right around the corner from UFC Fight Night Las Vegas. Mateusz Gamrot versus Quillan Salkilld. So I thought, why not break down the entire card for you guys, starting with the very first fight. So let's get underway here. The very first fight on the card is right now Manuel Souza versus Richie Miranda. This is a lightweight fight. Manuel Souza 14-1, Richie Miranda 13-1. So two guys that actually have very good records in the UFC. Richie Miranda making his debut. Manuel Souza, you might know him from the Dana White Contender Series, where he knocked out a guy and then he absolutely killed Balaji Oki in their most recent fight as well. Richie Miranda, he's been doing some good things in LFA, though. He is actually the LFA lightweight champion, or he was. So he's been in some 5-round fights and stuff like that, where they haven't gone 5 rounds, but, you know, he's had to train and prepare for that. So he's not just some bum coming in to debut. He has kind of been the main event of shows beforehand, and he's a bit of a name in LFA as well. For this fight, though, I am going to be taking Manuel Souza. I'm going to take him by KO. My reasoning for that is I think he's just better than Richie Miranda. I watched a lot of tape on Richie Miranda recently, and although he was kind of well-rounded and good everywhere and he can take people down, he has a good back take, and once he gets back controlled, he often holds opponents there for quite a while. And on the feet, he's willing to mix it up. He'll throw elbows, kicks. He's a southpaw fighter as well, which sometimes people find hard to kind of land that big power shot on a southpaw fighter who's mixing in takedowns with it. But he was great nowhere. Nothing really stood out to me as impressive or, you know, fight-changing. Whereas when you watch Manuel Souza, it really only takes one shot to change the fight. We saw that in the Balaji Oki fight where he just, you know, even if he is losing at moments, he can come back and absolutely destroy people. When he destroyed Balaji Oki late in that fight, you know, showing that he can push through the fire as well and push through the cardio. Christian Perez, he KO'd on the Dana White Contender Series 2, which was another good win. Christian Perez was 13-1 at the time, so he's not fighting bums. He's not fighting, you know, terrible cans. Even Balaji Oki was kind of giving Mason Jones a little bit of a tough time until Mason Jones got him out of there as well. So he's already had the big fights in the UFC. He came from LFA. He was also in Bellator as well, which was quite a decent. He did quite well over in Bellator too. He was a bit of a name. Tim Wilde 17-4. He KO'd him. His only loss came to Archie Colin as well, who was undefeated at the time. And I believe Archie Colin's only loss is to Usman Nurmagomedov. You know, so he's versing good opponents, and he's shown that now, and he's shown what he can do in the UFC. He's the younger guy. He's clearly got the power advantage. I'm going to take him by first round KO. I think he's nasty. I think he's deadly. And Richie Miranda, he's kind of someone that likes to press forward. He likes to press forward, meet in the middle, and scrap it out. And I think against someone like Manuel Souza, I think that's going to cost him. I think he's going to leave his chin up in the air and get chinned in this. And even watching the which fight was it? It was the was it the Barsley fight? One of these fights here, I can't remember who it was against, but I watched it on the LFA card. And it was 1-1 going into the third. It was a very close fight going into the third. And there was people arguing that really Richie Miranda shouldn't have actually won that fight. So I think Richie Miranda's got a really tough debut here, a really tough test. So I'm going to go Manuel Souza by KO. But a fun fight and a good fight. Two guys that I do think are UFC level. Moving up the card, we have Miles Johns versus Jesse Rosas, the Mexican. Jesse Rosas 8-1, making his UFC debut, I believe. And Miles Johns, everyone knows who that is. He is 15-5. Miles Johns is on a 3-fight losing streak, which I feel like we have to have a look at. But he is only 32. And if we look at those losses, they're really not bad losses. Daniel Marcos, 17-1, subbed him. You know, Gene Nascimento, 16-1 at the time, and it was a split decision. Miles Johns, you'll find that a lot of people even scored that Gene Nascimento fight for him. It was quite a competitive fight. Felipe Lima, who was 13-1 at the time. So these are all guys that are very clearly top 15 bantamweights. You know, he's losing to decent opponents. When he gets to Douglas Seville de Andrade, he beats him. When he gets to Cody Gibson, which is a kind of a step down, he beats him. Jesse Rosas making his UFC debut. The reason I'm going to be taking Miles Johns in this is just the age and the experience. Miles Johns knows how to win fights. He knows how to set up his big overhand. You know, he doesn't need the KO to win. He'll mix in takedowns. He's gritty. He's a true 3-round fighter. You know, he's going to bring that volume and that pace and that cardio for 3 rounds, and he's going to force you to fight. And he's going to try and beat you up, and he's going to try and make you quit on yourself. And I think he's just going to beat this guy with volume. Jesse Rosas is a fun fighter to watch. The Mexicans are always good. Their boxing's always technical. But when you're only 23 years old and you've been versing people on the regional scene that really aren't UFC level, like Eric Ruano, 23-10, This guy had good experience, and to get a sub win over someone like that is quite impressive. But if we take a step back and have a look at his fight before that, it's Luciano Ramos, who was 9-15. A terrible, terrible record. Fight before that, Caleb Petrat, 5-5. He has a loss to a guy who was 6-5. He has a win over Adam McGurk, 3-4. So he's not versing UFC level opponents. He's not even versing, opponents with decent records. So I think in this fight, it's similar to Bryce Mitchell versus Adrian Luna or whoever he fought. There is a time where it's too early for these young guys to step forward, and I think this is it. I think Miles Johns is going to show levels. I don't think he's done. I think he's on a 3-fight losing streak, but I think he'll be able to get a win here. I'm going to say decision because Roses is tough, and Miles Johns isn't always a finisher. If he's not landing that massive overhand, he's probably grinding you out with takedowns and beating you up on the ground to a gritty decision win. So I'm going to say Miles Johns, 29-28 decision win. Moving up the card, we have Darren the Damage Elkins, who is somehow still in this goddamn sport, somehow still in the UFC at the age of 42. He's known for having the best tattoos in the division, best tattoos in the UFC. He's taking on Yaida Devalle, the Cuban Problem. Yaida Devalle is 10-1. Darren Elkins is 29-12. So clearly there is a massive experience advantage on the side of Darren Elkins. But I think we all know this. It's just time for Darren Elkins. He's clearly gone past his prime. Even 3 or 4 years ago, he was past his prime, but he was able to compete with people like TJ Brown. He was able to compete with people like Daniel Pineda, who would hurt him and then would make low fight IQ things or would try and follow up with a guillotine and end up in a grappling exchange where Darren Elkins can kind of out-tough you. He had this toughness and this cardio back there 2 years ago, that even if he was losing the fight, he was able to still find a way to win and stay competitive. But I think what we can admit from that last Julian Erosa fight is that that's gone now. All you need to do is touch Darren Elkins and he'll die. Julian Erosa was not setting up head kicks. He was not looking for big power shots. He was touching him with the jab, and Darren Elkins had no idea where he was. He was dropping to a knee, looking to grab the ref. It was very clear to see that it's the end of his career. It's kind of like GM3 in a way, where it's like, it's fun to sometimes take them as these underdogs that might get it done because it's kind of their legacy is to, get beaten up until they win. But I think the time for Darren Elkins to be that kind of marauder and that guy that absorbs damage until you can't throw anymore and then he overtakes you and beats you in the fight, I think that time's done. He's way past his prime. He's way past the end of his career. That Julian Erosa fight was 1 year and 3 months ago, so he's taken some time off thinking that was probably, a strength of schedule that caused him to lose that fight. But the thing I liked in that fight too was Julian Erosa, he heard him and he didn't try and follow up with any ground and pound or submissions. I think that's what Yaida Devalle needs to do here as well. He does have some submission wins over Isaac Belgarian, which is a decent win. Conor Matthews isn't that great of a win, but it was a submission in the UFC as well. His only loss recently coming to Jordan Leavitt, his only loss overall. I don't like that too much. Jordan Leavitt's not great, but he's way better than Darren Elkins. And I believe he's dropping down to featherweight here too as well. So I think he's going to be able to beat Darren Elkins. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet early, even though he's more of a grappler than he is a striker. I am going to take Yaida Devalle by KO. I'm worried that he is going to try and go for a submission. You see here, a lot of people are picking him by submission. I don't think he needs to. I think that's where the danger is even going into grappling exchanges with Darren Elkins. You're leading him into the fight. So I think if Yaida can keep this on the feet and sort of pick apart Darren Elkins, this should be an easy TKO and this should be an easy first-round finish. We move up the card to Ty Miller versus Billy Ray Goff. This is going to be an awesome fight. This is going to be fun as fuck, man. This is happening at welterweight. I always thought Billy Goff was a little too small for welterweight. I'm a fan of him fighting. I think a lot of his fights are wars, and he comes out there and he always brings it. He's an entertaining fighter. But I have to take Ty Miller in this. Ty Miller, 7-0. He has a draw on his record, but Billy Goff, 9-4. Not a terrible record on either guy. Ty Miller's still young, still early in his career, 26. But the thing I liked about that Adam Fugit win 6 months ago is Adam Fugit's not really high level or not really UFC level. I think I would pick Billy Ray Goff to beat Adam Fugit, but Adam Fugit's willing to stand there. He's a tough guy on the feet, and if you throw something at him, he's going to throw something back. Ty Miller was not afraid to stand in the pocket with him. He was not afraid to exchange with him. And the thing I liked for Ty Miller was how much he kept it to the basics. I liked the jab one too. A lot of people thought that it was a kind of, he was throwing that way too much and he should mix things up and be more versatile. But I think a 1-2 down the middle with straight punch works perfectly against someone like Billy Ray Goff, who's kind of uncorking shots from the hook. He's a bit of a pressure fighter. He wants to run and jump at your hips and try and take you down or get in your face and swing wild in the pocket. I think that's going to play perfectly into Ty Miller's game of sharp, straight shots down the middle. I think Billy Ray Goff's going to run onto one of them. Billy Ray Goff's been cracked before. Can't remember if we've seen him get TKO'd. He did lose to Trey Waters and he lost to Ramiz Brahimaj, but that was by submission. He shot in a takedown on the first round and Brahimaj wrapped him up with a guillotine. And we've seen Brahimaj lose since then too, a couple of fights. So I don't think that loss has aged great for Billy Ray Goff. But I'm going to take Ty Miller by finish. I just think his striking's cleaner. I think this is going to be a fun fight on the feet. I think Billy Ray Goff's going to bring it. But I think as the fight goes on, I think the first round will be back and forth and scrappy. I think Miller's gonna take over. And I think Billy Ray Goff's style of being this tough guy that's small at welterweight and kind of dips in and leans into the pocket and forces the fight, I don't think that's going to work against a Ty Miller. And I think we're going to end up seeing Billy Ray Goff have to fight off the back foot and Ty Miller just being able to use his range and take over advantage of this fight. He's got 5 inches of range on him too. At welterweight, I could see this playing out similar to Carlos Prates versus JDM, where it doesn't matter how tough and good your boxing is in Billy Ray Goff. If you're not able to get Ty Miller down or make it a stand-up fight in the pocket, I think Ty Miller's going to use his range, have the more versatile strikes. And I think it's going to come down to that simple 1-2 down the middle. I think that's what's going to hurt Billy Ray Goff. And I think he's going to be the first guy to KO Billy Ray Goff in the UFC. So I'm taking Ty Miller by second round KO. The next fight is Duria Nogueira versus Bruno Lopez. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about this one. Because at a glance, it's Dinya 11-2 versus Bruno 14-3. But really, for me, I'm not impressed by either of these guys that much. DR was super hyped up when he was 11-0 coming in here off of the Dana White Contender Series. And then he got subbed by Branderson Ribeiro, which is a pretty rough look. Branderson Ribeiro has kind of shown that he's maybe not as much as a can as we thought he was, but to lose to anyone by submission, or to lose to anyone by Kimura is a really bad look on your record at heavyweight, or even at light heavyweight, But then he lost to Uran Saltibayev by another submission, an Ezekiel choke. I remember that one. So he has a tendency to kind of throw it all out there in the first round, and if things don't go his way, quit and give up. He did get the win over Rafael Tobias, who was 14-1. That is a good win for him to have on his record. Bruno Lopez, however, 14-3. His most recent loss was Navajo Sterling. And I remember everyone kind of saying Navajo Sterling should run through this guy. He's a little bit of a can. And Navajo did TKO him and finish him pretty easily. But Navajo Sterling's no joke. He's fighting Jan Blachowicz this weekend. He's got a big fight. He's clearly a ranked guy. He's clearly going to be a top 15 guy in the future. He's clearly a good kickboxer. So a loss there isn't really that big of a deal. And a loss to Dustin Jacoby isn't a terrible look either at light heavyweight. There's plenty of guys that try and kickbox with Dustin Jacoby and end up getting finished on the feet. So it's a hard fight to predict for me. Part of me really wants to take Bruno Lopez just because I think we're putting too much stock into DR, but I do like DR. I do think he has a good style. I do think when he gets on top of you, he has really good ground and pound. And I do like his striking on the feet. It's just, will he be able to last longer than one round? But will Bruno Lopez, you know what I mean? It wasn't that long ago he got finished by Navajo, and Navajo really didn't light him up with too much. It was pretty, Bruno Lopez is shown to be pretty chinny. So I think I am going to go Nogueira by KO in the first round, but I'm also going to wait until we see the weigh-ins and see how well these guys do at making weight and get a closer look at it. But for now, I'm going to go Nogueira by first round KO. But it really is one of those light heavyweight fights that, I would stay away from, considering I imagine that the betting line's probably... does it show here who is the favorite yet? The betting lines may not be out yet, but I imagine DR will be quite a heavy favorite. Moving up on the card, we have Jose Montana versus Louis Sutherland. Louis Sutherland, 11-5, fighting out of England, I believe, or Scotland maybe, but Jose Montana, 6-1. This is another one of those heavyweight fights where it was similar to Hines versus RJ Brown or whoever it was recently, a few weeks back, where it's like a heavyweight we don't really know much about versus Alvin Hines. How do we kind of book this? Well, we've seen some of Alvin Hines, so maybe we should take him. But I ended up taking RJ instead. This time I'm going to do the opposite. I don't know a lot about Jose Montana. You can only find his highlights out there. It's actually quite hard to watch some of his recent fights because they were on dead regional fighting, promotions you've never heard of. But just a look at who he's beating. He is getting some submission wins, but against Bruno De Jesus, who's 3-0 at the time, against John, Ribeiro, who was 1-0, against Carlos Amaral Jr., who had never had a fight before. He lost to a guy who was 3-0. He beat another guy who was 0-0. So he's beating a lot of cans, a lot of unknown people. And even from what I saw from his highlights, he is built like a proper heavyweight. He's built like a machine. He's not one of these blobs. He does look like one of those people you should be checking his juice, make sure that it's got no supplements in it. But Louis Sutherland, on the other hand, I don't think he's that good either. I'm not that impressed by Louis Sutherland. He came into the UFC. He had 2 losses. One to Walter Walker by submission heel hook. We now realize that that's happening to a lot of people. Walter Walker's pretty damn good at pulling guard or getting you down and submitting you. And a KO loss to Brandon Pericic. He did very little in that Brando Pericic fight. He tried to open up with some big things and some styly moves. And that's what, Louis Sutherland sometimes tries to do. He sometimes tries to throw a spinning back kick or a running knee, similar to how Derek Lewis might start a fight before kind of reforming back to his typical blob, kind of slow on the feet, throwing big power punches. But the thing that I liked for Louis Sutherland was not only were those 2 losses to 2 decent guys who are going to be in the top 15 soon, I liked the win over Tai Tuivasa. I know Tai Tuivasa is terrible. I know he's on a 6-fight losing streak. But what I liked about it was Louis Sutherland clearly watched the tape, clearly watched the game plan, and knows that the way to beat someone like Tai Tuivasa is don't go out there and exchange with him. Don't go out there and give a barn burner to the fans. Just get the win, take him down, ground and pound him, look to control him, look to submit him. And he was able to do that to Tai Tuivasa better than arguably anyone else has been. I think he scored a 10-8 over him, A lot of other fighters were able to finish Tai Tuivasa, like Volkov, like Tybura. But for Louis Sutherland, that showed that he's willing to learn, he's willing to get better on the job, and he's not just going to be some striker out of England. He's looking to mix in wrestling as well if he needs. So I think he just has more tools to beat someone like Jose Montejano. Jose Montejano is an animal. I do think there is a world where he just clips Louis Sutherland and it's all over. But I'm going to trust in Louis Sutherland to get this done. I'm going to trust that he's actually, going to have more tools, more of a variety. And I'm going to take decision win as well. I can see him using his wrestling. I know Jose Montejano has some submissions, but I don't think he's actually been tested in the wrestling realm that well. And when you're someone the same size as him, being forced to wrestle at heavyweight, you're going to get tired. You're going to get sloppy. And if you haven't had a lot of these 3-round fights, it's going to be very, very hard for you. Whereas someone like Louis Sutherland, he's already been in the UFC. He's already tasted success and defeat. He kind of knows what he's in for here. I think he's going to be able to shine on the stage and beat your Jose Montejano. I'm taking Louis Sutherland by decision. We move up to another fight, which is Juliana Miller versus Ravina Oliveira. I said I don't know how Darren Elkins is in the UFC, but I genuinely have no fucking clue how either of these women are in the UFC. Okay, Juliana Miller, I've been watching this girl since The Ultimate Fighter because she was a character on the show. She was very weird and outgoing and kind of caused a bit of drama, but she ended up winning that show. Since then, she has looked fucking terrible. She does not improve from fight to fight. She has a very basic style. She comes out extremely square on. There is no, versatility. She may throw a leg kick, but she's square on and everything comes from her shoulders. No jab is thrown properly. There is no technical defense. She's constantly leaving her chin up in the air on the back foot, circling. She's a circler. She fights on the outside. However, so does Ravina Oliveira. She has a tendency to kind of back up in some of her fights as well. But the thing I like for Ravina is she's at least willing to throw a 1-2 down the middle. She throws everything with power. She throws everything to kill you. And she does miss a lot, which has caused her to gas in her last 2 fights. It led to the Stephanie, who was her name? It led to the Chanel Dyer TKO, just being too sloppy, just missing lots of shots. But Chanel Dyer is technical. Chanel Dyer is throwing leg kicks. She's throwing teeps. She's bringing her kicks up to the head. She's throwing 1-2 and circling and kneeing to the body, putting you in a clinch and outpowering you, getting underhooks, turning and separating. She's fighting like an actual fighter should. Juliana Miller and Ravina Oliveira, they're the female fighters that you look at and you go, this is why WMMA shouldn't be a sport. Both are very, very low level. And I have to take Ravina Oliveira in this fight. Even though Juliana Miller has had a win more recent than her, a 3-fight losing streak for Ravina Oliveira, lost to Tainara Lisboa. That was kind of a back and forth, grappling, holding up against the cage. No one really did anything in that fight. Lost to Stephanie Luciano, same thing, got submitted in that fight. Lost to Chanel Dyer, was TKO'd. Kind of just gave up and ran out of steam in that second round. Juliana Miller lost to Veronica Hardy. Veronica Hardy got Dan Hardy in her corner. She sort of just circled for, the whole fight, and Juliana Miller couldn't do anything. That was 3 years ago, though. Lost to Luana Santos by TKO. That's aged okay. Luana Santos is still winning, still in a good streak, and still a very good fighter in the division. Beat Ivana Petrovic, which at the time, everybody was taking Ivana Petrovic. But the thing with Petrovic is she was a very, very slow striker. So although she was the better striker, she started slow in the feed. So as she went on to gas later in the fight, the second and third round, because Juliana Miller has this style where she'll come forward, throw a 1-2 that's not really supposed to land, and then duck whatever you're doing and grab you around the body and look for trips and look to hurl you to the ground, where she's comfortable just lying on top of you and trying to secure your back and win positions. She's not really looking for submissions. She's more looking for position. And that's really all she has is this body lock takedown. Sometimes she'll switch from the body leg to the body lock to the single leg, but most of the time when she does that, people are able to kind of defend it quite well. I think Ravina Oliveira is strong in the clinch, but I wouldn't recommend her engaging in the clinch with Juliana Miller. That's what Juliana Miller wants to do, is just a clinch fight up against the cage. Kind of one of those 50-50 fights where, no one's really doing anything, no one's landing any damage, but they just take turns spinning around on the cage and holding each other there. One of those fights where it's hard to score. That's what Juliana Miller wants, because that's how she wins her fights. But with the Ivana Petrovic fight, Petrovic was very slow to start with. Ravina Oliveira, she does slow down in the fight, but at the start, she's got massive overhand. She's got massive power. She'll throw the jab first. She'll throw a lead hook into a wild overhand. And against Stephanie Dyer, a couple of shots landed, and then she looked against Chanel Dyer, a couple of shots landed, and then she looked very, very wild. And it looked like she was missing, and she looked like she had zero skill. I don't think she's going to look like that against someone like Juliana Miller, who's kind of just a circler. She's just an outside circler. She has no defense. She very rarely puts her hands up, but she's willing to circle with her chin in the air. I think that's prime suspect to get caught by Oliveira. So there are people taking Juliana Miller in this fight, but 4-4 with the fights she's had recently and the lack of skill, the lack of evolution I've seen from fight to fight, I can't take Juliana Miller in this. There's a world where Oliveira gasses and Miller's able to, she's improved and she's able to get the body lock and kind of control her for 3 rounds. But I think if this isn't a finish from either girl, honestly, I think both girls deserve to be cut from the promotion. Very, very low-level fight here. I'm not sure why it's this high up on the card. But I just cannot take Juliana Miller in 2026. So I'm going to take Ravina Oliveira to win this by finish. We move up to another fight. Steven Asplund versus Guilherme Pat. Steven Asplund's known for being the guy who shakes his titties on the Dana White Contender Series. You know what I mean? But he's a fun fighter, man. He's awesome to watch. The fight against Sean Strife was absolutely amazing in the UFC. That was a 3-round war. The fight against Vitor Petrino, another 3-round war. And although Petrino's an absolute specimen and he's like scary to fight, and any shot that could land could put you out cold, Steven Asplund brought it to him, and Petrino did win that fight, but Asplund was there, and Asplund was there for 3 rounds. And, and I think the activity for Asplund is really going to play a role in this fight too. He's fresh off the Dana White Contender Series 10 months ago. He's already had 2 UFC fights, a big win and then a loss too. So he kind of knows what it is like. 7-2 versus 6-1 Guilherme Pat. Guilherme Pat was, a big name coming into this sport when he was undefeated, 6-0. But really, if we look at his wins, Luis Oliveira 3-1, Leandro Moreira 0-0, Mauricio Quiros 4-4, Alan Fry Jr. 6-0. This was his good win entering into the UFC. This is what gave him a little bit of a name, but it wasn't actually that amazing of a performance. And then the loss to Thomas Peterson. Thomas Peterson is a good fighter. Thomas Peterson will actually circle on the outskirts, and he looks like a blob that just wants to wrestle, but he mixes it up well. He mixes up the takedowns well. He feints a lot of the time with his boxing, and then he presses you up against the cage, and he unloads 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots, and it kind of leaves you playing defense while he steps back out of the pocket, and you don't really get your chance to fight back or throw back. Peterson has a very good job of breaking the rhythm. A lot of times fighting is dancing. It's your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. Peterson's circling and his mixing of takedowns and his feints helps break that rhythm to the point where Guilherme Pat just did nothing. He did nothing for those 3 rounds. Even in the first round, you expect Pat to kind of be explosive and have more energy and go after Peterson, but he just didn't. The thing with Steven Asplund is I don't think he's going to have to chase Asplund. Asplund's going to be there looking for a war, looking for a fight. So this is going to take place on the feet. And that's why I'm going to favor Stephen Asplund. I think we saw him against a heavy hitter like Petrino, and he wasn't worried to take that shot. It's not like he's a chinny guy, so it's not like if Guilherme Pat catches him, we have to be too worried. I think Stephen Asplund wants this more. I think he has more of a fighter mentality. I think he's willing to eat a shot to give one, whereas Guilherme Pat seems to kind of want to be clean and land that perfect shot or land that perfect takedown. And I don't favor that too much. I think Asplund's going to be able to follow Thomas Peterson's blueprint and kind of use his footwork more, use his jab. He may even look to use the clinch and kind of feint a little bit to set up those shots. I think Stephen Asplund has a way better chance of winning this fight. It is a heavyweight fucking two guys fight, so it could be just a KO on either person's end. But I am going to take Steve Asplund. And I could even see this being a slow, boring fight where Asplund just wins by decision, just outdoing someone like Guilherme Pat, who's kind of always looking for that perfect shot. But we are going to take Stephen Asplund. Moving up to the card, moving up at the fights on the card, we have Amanda Lemos versus Alexia Tainara. You guys already know what this is. This is a straight up butch battle. These are like the kind of female fights you do want to watch because the girls are basically men, and that's what gives them power. Amanda Lemos versus Alexia Tainara. I personally thought Amanda Lemos actually looked very good in a recent outing against Julian Robertson early on. I felt like she was using the guillotine very well to stop Julian Robertson. Anytime Julian Robertson got her down, she had really good scrambles and was using it to take Julian's back and then get back to her own feet. She was clearly the more polished striker. But as the fight went on, Amanda Lemos is 39. Her cardio is not quite what it used to be. People are able to steal the fights away from her, steal the round away from her. And the way Julian Robertson was able to get her down was less physical and more timing on the takedowns. She was timing takedowns perfectly around, the double leg and able to get Amanda Lemos down like that and win the fight. The thing that I liked about that was Amanda Lemos is someone with quite good physicality in the female fighting division, the strawweight division. So for Julian Robertson to be able to do that without the physicality advantage, I think Alexia Tainara is going to have a lot of success with the physicality advantage. Alexia Tainara, 14-1. She's blown everyone out of the water since she's come into the UFC. Her only loss is to Bruna Brazil, and she got that one back 4 months ago with a pretty dominant decision. Loma Lookboon, fighter, but that's a win that's aged very well. Loma Lookboon me, even though she's small, her kickboxing, her technical stand-up is very good, and she's actually quite good at getting back to her feet. So for Alexia Tainara to be able to get her down, hold her down, and beat her in a fight like she was, that's a win that's aged quite well. I think she has the momentum on her side. She's young. She's 28. She's 14-1. She's not going to get fraud checked. She's the real deal. I think she's going to use her physicality to beat Amanda Lemos here. She has power on the feet, and she'll throw 1-2s, and she can kind of get away with being less technical because you have to respect her power. However, I think Amanda Lemos is going to be the more polished striker on the feet. I think Lemos is going to be looking to deny the takedowns and tire Tainara out and get her out of there on the feet. But in a 3-round fight, Alexia only has to win 2 rounds. I think she'll get her down, and even if she drops that first round, kind of while Lemos is still fresh, I think she'll win the second and third. She's shown that, although she might gas a little bit and kind of take her foot off the pedal a wee bit, she's there for 3 rounds, and she's dangerous for 3 rounds. So I'm going to take Tainara by decision. But I don't hate the Lemos pick here. I really don't. If you're basing it on that first round against Gillian Robertson, I don't hate the pick, especially when she's only lost to Tatiana Suarez and Brianna Jandiroba. She's only losing to the best. She beat Yasmin Lucindo and Mackenzie Dern. Those are really, really good wins. But she's 39. And it gets to a point where it's like, okay, you can have all the skills and the technicality, but if you don't have that cardio and that heart anymore, even if you do have that heart, your body gives up on you. There's a certain point where your body and your age and, time ends up killing everybody. It's, it's a limited means for everyone. Time really is. So I think she's ran out of time to be this prospect in the strawweight division. She'll be a good gatekeeper, but I think Tainara is the real deal, and I think Tainara is going to get past her, be able to get the takedowns, control her on the ground. She has good timing, Tainara, but she also has the physicality here. She's going to pick Amanda Lemos up and drop her on her ass. I am taking Alexia Tainara to win by decision. Next up, we have our co-main event, which is a very weird co-main event. Maybe they're going to add a fight to this card. I'm not sure. But it's Billy Quarantillo making his return after a year and 7 months, except he's making his return at lightweight versus Diego Ferreira, who is also coming back after his loss to Alexander Hernandez 10 months ago. 37 years of age versus 41. Both guys way past their prime. Both guys never going to be anything in the lightweight division. Billy Quarantillo, 18-7. Diego Ferreira, 19-7. So very similar records. if this was prime for prime, I would take Diego Ferreira. If this was prime for prime, I would take Diego Ferreira. I think he was a very good fighter in his prime. I think he even had a good second win where he was able to beat people like Rambetsky. He was able to land that massive overhand on Michael Johnson, who's very chinny. So I understand why a lot of people want to take Diego in this fight, but I just think his decline has been so apparent, his last two fights, and I think you have to look at that. And although Billy Quarantillo's chinny and he's been losing as well, the loss to Cub Swanson's aged okay. We saw how good Cub Swanson is now, even still, in his retirement fights against Nate Landwehr. We saw how much damage he was able to put on him, how perfect of a performance. So I don't even hate the loss to Cub Swanson anymore. Yes, it's shown signs of being chinny, but Cub might be also old like Ferreira, but Cub was still quick and fast. Whereas Diego Ferreira, in that Alexander Hernandez fight, he should have won that fight. In his prime, he was far better than Hernandez, but he was slow, he was sloppy. It's almost like Diego Ferreira's fallen in love with his striking after that KO win over Michael Johnson. He's not often looking to grapple as much as he used to, whereas jiu-jitsu used to be his bread and butter. And even the Mateusz Rambetsky win, it was good, but we've kind of seen that anyone that gets involved in a war with Rambetsky, it's a 50-50. We've seen him lose to Chris Duncan the same way. We've seen him lose to, I can't remember who. We've seen him lose a few fights like that. Mateusz Rambetsky at the time was 19-1 on a massive win streak. He's not anymore. We've kind of seen the decline from him as well. So I think Diego Ferreira against Grant Dawson too. Grant Dawson was able to easily hold him down, dominated him in that fight. Grant Dawson's good. These aren't terrible losses, but I am going to take Billy Quarantillo. I think Quarantillo's going to have more dog in him. I think he's just going to mix it up more. I think he's going to use his jab and his 1-2, whereas Diego Ferreira is kind of more looking for those big overshots, those big power overhands. And if he tries to mix in the wrestling, I think one thing we can say about Billy Quarantillo is his cardio is still clearly good. The loss to Yusuf Zalal's not terrible either. Yusuf Zalal's now become a pretty damn good contender. Damon Jackson's a good wrestler with no striking, and Billy Quarantillo was able to keep up with him for 3 rounds. Diego Ferreira, I think even if he mixes in his wrestling, I think he's going to gas first. And I can actually see Billy Quarantillo getting a late round 3 finish. He hasn't been in any fights recently, so he's had a year and 7 months off. I think we're going to see a good version of Billy Quarantillo here, up at lightweight, not having to make that weight cut at his old age. He used to cut down to featherweight, whereas Ferreira's still fighting at his weight class, still having to make that cut at 41 years of age. I think he's way past his prime compared to Billy Quarantillo, and I'm going to take Billy Quarantillo by a late finish. Main event time. We have my older brother, Quillan Salkilld. Shout out the Anzacs. Shout out Australia. Taking on Mateusz Gamrot, which is, pretty weird for a Polish to versus Australian and that be the Las Vegas main event. But that's what the UFC does now. I'm not going to complain. Mateusz Gamrot, 26-4. Quillan Salkilld, 12-1. It's a hard fight to predict. It really is, because as much as we know Quillan Salkild's good, we know he's going to be a top 15 fighter. We know he's the real deal. He's still only young. He's still only 26. He's still early in his UFC career, and he's still 12-1. You know what I mean? He hasn't got a lot of experience, whereas Mateusz Gamrot is 26-4. And his losses have come to some pretty big names in the division. First thing people are going to be looking at is they're going to be comparing the Beneil Dariush fights. Quillan Salkilld briefly had a little bit of trouble with Beneil Dariush, but was able to, TKO him and get him out of there in the very first round. Beneil obviously past his prime now, very chinny these days. So, that doesn't, I don't think that was the same Beneil that was able to beat Gamrot those years back and really be the first guy to beat Gamrot in the UFC and kind of show levels. So I don't know how much we can look into that. What I do want to look at, though, is the Dan Hooker loss. And even though it was a split decision, and even though Dan Hooker's a top 15 guy, and even though you could argue Gamrot won that fight, I think it was very evident that if you're someone that can deny the takedowns, get back to your feet, and put it on Gamrot, that's how you beat him. That's it. He's got no stand-up. He's willing to pressure you. He's willing to put the cardio on you. But if you're someone that's not going to gas, all Dan Hooker used was use the guillotine to get back to his feet, and then he was able to absolutely destroy Mateusz Gamrot on the feet. Quillan Salkilld, when he beat Nasrat Haqparast with a head kick recently, where was that? Yeah, they had him beat Nasrat Haqparast recently with a head kick. He said, I watched Dan Hooker's game plan against Nasrat Haqparast, and I was going to copy that to a T. That's what he was going to do against Nasrat. He wasn't intending for a head kick finish. He was going to wrestle Nasrat and then beat him up on the feet the same way Dan Hooker did a few years ago. So if he's watching Dan Hooker's game plan against Nasrat, I can only imagine he's watching Dan Hooker's fight against Gamrot, and he's seeing the same holes in Gamrot's game that we've seen. You know, he was also able to beat Michael Ashmuz. Yanal Ashmuz. That was like a gritty fight where both guys were striking, both guys were wrestling. 3 rounds. He did kind of start to fade in the end of that fight, but he still won the first 2 rounds. I don't know how he'll look in the 4th and 5th if it gets there against Gamrot. I am concerned that the longer the fight goes on, the more chance Gamrot has winning by decision. But for Gamrot, he did beat Esteban Ribovic with a arm triangle. That is a very good win. Esteban Ribovic is pretty good, but Esteban Ribovic is also, he's technical, but he's wild. He's looking for these crazy finishes and spinning head kicks and spinning elbows, and he kind of throws everything into every shot. Quillan Salkild's a little bit more tapered back than that. He's a little bit smarter of a striker. He's a bit more clinical. You know, he changes from fight to fight, whether this fight he might be looking to wrestle. Next fight he's looking to land 1-2s. Next fight he's leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks. I think he just has way more tools than Gamrot. And I think regardless of how often Gamrot shoots, we are going to have times where this fight's on the feet. And I think Quillan Salkild's levels above him. I think Quillan Salkilld would easily beat a Dan Hooker, who was able to get past Gamrot. The Charles Oliveira submission, I'm not going to put too much stock in that. It was short notice for Gamrot. And Charles Oliveira's clearly got amazing jiu-jitsu, the most submissions in the UFC. So we're going to look past that. The win over Ludovic Klein, he was able to hold Ludovic Klein down. Ludovic Klein is a very good fighter, but he's not as big as Quillan Salkilld. Ludovic Klein kind of gets out physical. He has a bit of a physicality issue at lightweight. We've seen Ludovic Klein. He used to fight at featherweight against guys like Shane Young. He had a lot of success, but at lightweight, he's good. He's technical, but it does get out, out physical. So the Rafael Dos Anjos win was good as well. But just before that Rafael Dos Anjos win, he had the Jalen Turner fight. And that fight arguably could have been scored for Jalen Turner. So if Jalen Turner is able to use butterfly guard to get back to his feet and then land on you, I think Quillan Salkild's going to be able to do the same thing. I'm going to take Quillan Salkilld. I think he's smart. I think he game plans. He takes these fights very seriously. I'm going to take him by 2nd round TKO. I think the 1st round, Gamrot's going to be wrestling heavy. I think we're going to see some exchanges. I think we might even see Gamrot land some strikes on the feet. Same way Beneil was able to land against Quillan Salkilld. Often when you're worried about the wrestling, you leave your hands low. But Mateusz Gamrot has very little power in his hands. He's not going to be able to hurt you. He fought Charles Oliveira off of the Ilia Topuria knockout, and he was landing some clean strikes on Charles, and Charles just walked right through them. He wasn't able to hurt Charles. He landed some damage to Dan Hooker, but it was more just opening up old cuts on the surface of his face. Quillan Salkilld has never taken damage in the sport. He's 12-1. He has all the skills he needs to beat Gamrot. I think he's even going to use the guillotine the same way Dan Hooker did against Gamrot, because Gamrot, he does shoot singles and body locks, but a lot of the time when Gamrot shoots, it's a double or it's a single with his head on the outside. So he's open for that guillotine. And I think he expects his opponents to shoot the gilly, jump the gilly fully, and then if Gamrot gets out of it, they're now on the ground and their arms are feeling quite tired. The thing that Dan Hooker did, which I think Quillan Salkilld is going to be able to implement, is stand up with the guillotine. If you just hold the guillotine up against the cage, eventually they have to respect it. They have to pull their head out and fight you. And now you're still on your feet. And now you're both fighting in the clinch. And you haven't been taken down. So I think that's the strategy Quillan's going to be able to use here. I think he's the better striker completely. And I think Gamrot sometimes gets suckered into these dogfights. And I think Quillan Salkild's better at dogfights than him. I think he's going to be able to stay technical in a war on the feet and just mix it up more. I think there's going to be leg kicks against Gamrot. I think there's going to be body kicks. If it gets dragged into deep water, I could see Gamrot winning a decision or a late round submission from Quillan Salkilld, never being in that deeper waters, never being in a fight for that long. But as for now, I trust him. He comes from a good camp. He's been evolving every single fight. His game plan changes every single fight, and he sticks to it like a T. He has good fight IQ. He's a good wrestler. He's shown decent cardio. He's shown a decent chin, and he's also shown decent technical stand-up. There's even been times he's switched stances in his career. So he just has too much for Mateusz Gamrot here, and too much for me to look the other way. So that is going to be my prediction for the main event. I am going to take Quillan Salkilld to win by KO. This has been my predictions. This has been a breakdown of the full card. I hope you guys enjoy. I will timestamp this all for you. And if you disagree with me or agree with me, feel free to leave a comment saying that below. Other than that, I will catch all of you guys in the next one.